Hollow Bones about? Hollow Bones is the story of Molly Fitzgerald when she's 2 months old. Sorry, her mother goes to a doctor's appointment and never comes home again. And it's 9/11, and she grows up in the shadow of that. When we meet her 25 years later, she is married to Jesse Fitzgerald, who is the delinquent brother from My Sister's Keeper, all grown up. And they're expecting a baby. And she happens to run the Rhode Island Department of Emergency Preparedness. And her whole life is built around keeping people from experiencing the kind of catastrophes that she did when she was growing up. But, disasters have a way of happening. And when one hits a little close to home, she realizes that you can prepare for anything except for what you never see coming. And to me, this is a story about motherhood. It's a story about the lies that we tell to keep our loved ones safe. And it's also a story about gender discrimination in healthcare without giving anything away. So, Hollow Bones actually came from a fellow author friend of mine. Her name is Bridget Kemmerer. She writes YA and adult romantasy. And she, she's a friend of mine, so we're texting back and forth. And one day she texted me this post from Post Secret, which used to be a Tumblr handle and now is an Instagram handle, and basically invites people to send in their deepest, darkest secrets anonymously on a postcard. And then they publish them. And the secrets can be like anything. They can be from, I like to dress up in, my wife's clothing to my husband doesn't know our child isn't his, things like that. And the one that she sent me was a picture, a kind of a hand drawing of the Twin Towers on fire with smoke coming out of them. And at the bottom, it said, "Everyone who knew me before 9/11 thinks that I'm dead." Yeah, that's exactly how I reacted. I was like, "Whoa, what?" And I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I kept thinking, what would make somebody use a disaster of that magnitude to disappear? And then the flip side of that coin, what might make that person come back? And that's really what Hollow Bones started as. That was the crucible for Hollow Bones. Oh, wow. Um, I guess, for the ones with the twist, did you see it coming? Because I write twists a lot and I try really hard to make it so that you can't see them coming. Um, and yeah, I think the other thing that I really like book clubs to dive into is sort of the morality of my characters, because none of them are all villains or all saints. And that is very much like the way people are. I try to write them that way. So I really like it when people sort of dissect that kind of stuff. The other thing that I think is really important is many of my books are paired with some sort of social issue or social justice topic. And I think it's very important that a book club look at that too, because when I write about an issue, I try to give you both sides of the issue so that you can decide where you land on it. And I will give you all the information necessary to make that decision. But what I am asking you to do is to rethink your positions, because most of us form positions about very contentious issues at a very young age when we are, at the knees of our parents or our pastors or our friends or whatever, our teachers. And we stick with that until, here we are at 60 going, why do I believe that actually? So I think what my books invite you to do is ask yourselves questions that maybe you haven't asked yourself in years. And I would hope that book clubs pick up some of those questions about social justice as well. Oh gosh. Okay, so one of the best books that I read this year was Into the Blue by Emma Brody. And for me, I'm always a little bit amazed when a book surprises me because I'm very good at figuring out twists. I don't know, maybe it's like occupational hazard. And I had to sit, like I actually had to sit when the twist came in that book and just go, whoa. It's also so beautifully written and so real that I still think about the characters, and I read it months ago. So that's a great one. I also just finished a book that I don't even think is published yet, but I think it's coming out soon, called The Good Parts, which was such an interesting speculative fiction premise, um, where you can take a pill and forget who you were, everything. And this man's wife winds up taking a pill, from the black market and forgetting everything, and he wants their relationship back. And obviously, something terrible has happened that made her take the pill, and that's kind of unfolding as the book goes on. But it was such a cool book to just sit with. So those are two reads that I've had recently that I've really enjoyed. My biggest and best library memory was when I was very little. I started to read very, very young. I was about 4 years old and I was reading. And not surprising, I came from a family of teachers. And my mom, twice a week would go to our library and would come home with a stack of books. And all I wanted was to go and get my own books. And I so distinctly remember the day I could sign my name so that I could go and get a library card and come home with my own stack of books. Like that's one of my earliest memories. It's so good. We love libraries. They're more important than ever. And I also want to give a big shout out to librarians because in many states they are on the front lines of a wave of book banning. And I want them to know that we authors who are being banned see them and thank them. You know, I would say lean on your relationships with your patrons because so many librarians really do form a close bond with patrons. And I think that encouraging those patrons to be active in their local communities and in on their school boards, if they can run for school board, if they can't, to attend the meetings. We see that sort of the crucible for book banning is school libraries right now, and it's bled out into public libraries. So if it hasn't hit your public library yet, don't worry, it will. And so it's really important that in the position that they're in as librarians, they need to speak to lovers of books who come into libraries all the time and say, now is the time to be active before your right to read is taken away. So I was 15 and I was reading Danielle Steele and I was reading so much stuff, that I probably should not have been reading yet. What I will tell you is that my mother did not allow me to read Judy Blume's Forever because there was a sex scene in it, right? And I was really precocious. I was reading young, right? So she wouldn't let me read it. And a few years ago, Judy Blume actually moderated one of my events, and I told her that story, and she mailed me a copy of Forever, and the inscription was, "Tell your mom, I think it's okay if you read it now." I mean, thank you. Thank you so much for supporting me. I've had a very long and storied career. This is my 30th novel. That doesn't happen by accident. I worked really hard to get where I am today, but I would have gotten nowhere if I didn't have the support of readers, of booksellers, and of organizations like Ingram that, make reading possible on a very literal level. So, I mean, I don't ever lose sight of that. This is not a solo act, being a writer. And I think it's nice to have the opportunity to say thank you when people are, a captive audience on the other side of this webinar. To be able to say, I really do appreciate all of you reading my books, buying my books, distributing my books, and making sure that I've had a spectacular 30 years of writing.